This video is about how I created the acoustic panels in my home theater. Here are the tools I used for the project. You'll need a brad nailer with 1 to 1 1/4 inch nails. Now you don't need a brad nailer. You can manually drive those screws or hammer those nails in. Just make sure they're thin enough so you don't split the wood. If you use screws, think about buying a countersink bit. That will help not to split the wood and drive the head of that screw beneath the surface so you won't have that screw head rest on top of the wood. I have a speed square, but it's not absolutely necessary. I use it to make sure my corners are indeed 90 degrees and to mark off my cut lines. I have my tape measure, which is essential. I'm going to use my miter saw. You can get away with using a hand saw similar to this. I have this box which helps with a straight cut. This hand saw with the box will give you just as accurate and straight a cut. The only downside is that it's slower and takes more effort. As for materials, you'll need one 1x4x8 pine board and one 1x4x4 pine board. I actually picked up two 1x4x8 boards. That's going to leave me with an extra 4-foot board, but I plan on using that extra on another project. I measured and marked off 2 feet on the first board, then made my first cut with the miter saw. If you're using a miter saw, don't cut like this. The guard is covering the blade, so I'm unlikely to cut my arm, but this isn't the best place for my arm to be. Instead of using the tape measure again, I used the 2-foot board I just cut to measure and mark off my second cut. I then made my second cut. Now I have two 2-foot boards that will be the top and bottom of my panel. I'm left with 4 feet of wood from the first board, which will be one of the sides of the acoustic panel. I used this 4-foot board to measure and mark off 4 feet on the second board. Here, I'm checking to make sure they're exactly the same length, and they are. Now I have two 2-foot boards and two 4-foot boards. I created this jig to make nailing in the corners at 90 degrees easier. You don't need this, but I found it very helpful. Without it, I found myself struggling to keep the 2 boards at a perfect 90 degrees with one hand while trying to drive in nails with a heavy brad nailer with the other. Making it didn't take 5 minutes. I used 4 screws and some scrap wood that was laying around. I used clamps to keep them in place while I nailed the corners together. Here I'm using the brad nailer to join the boards. You only really need about 3 or 4 nails. I went a bit overboard, but works either way. You could also use some wood glue in addition to the nails for a really secure bond, but so far for me, the brad nails have worked just fine by themselves. The first corner is done, so I flip to the other side. lined up the boards using the jig, made sure the edges were all aligned. I clamped it again to make sure it stayed exactly where it needs to be and didn't move. I didn't use a second clamp this time because it was easy enough to hold it in place and perfectly aligned with my hand. I flipped it again and followed the same steps, aligned it with the jig. At this point, I didn't need the clamps at all. The boards were pretty easy to align. A quick safety note here, if you're using a brad nailer, just be careful. Be aware of where your hands are in case a nail comes out of the wood. My hand appears closer to the gun than it really is, so I'm not in any real danger of some errant nail hitting my hand. At the last corner, I didn't use the jig at all. The frame is pretty stiff at this point, so the corner almost aligns itself. This last step is optional. I added a brace to the middle of the frame to add some rigidity to it and to prevent it from bowing over time. Again, you don't have to do this step, but it gives me some peace of mind that the frame will be stable and won't warp over time. This is a piece of scrap wood I had laying around. I cut it to fit the width of the frame. I found the exact center and marked it off on both sides. Then I aligned the brace and nailed it into place. And that's it. We have a sturdy, solid, complete frame. Stay tuned for part 2 of this project. In that, I'll walk you through how I completed the acoustic panel.